Been using the 5D Mark 1 as the classic, everyone seems to call it now, for about 15-16 years. And recently I've looked at the 5D Mark 4. I've been going through the R6, had to go with that for a bit. Didn't switch to the R6, so I've got a 5D Mark 4 body, managed to get one for I think about 1700, and the shutter count was about 200, so I couldn't not buy it, to be honest. It was an immaculate camera, so I thought I'd buy it. And I've also bought the 24-105 Mark II. I basically made two camera systems so that I can have a backup camera and a main camera. Sometimes the 5D Classic is going to be the main camera, and sometimes the 5D Mark IV. But I just thought I'd share a few things with you just to go through my thoughts on both cameras, because you might be thinking of spending quite a lot of money, or as you know, you can spend £200 and get a 5D Classic. So first thing I want to look at is the weight. So picking the two cameras up, you don't actually notice much weight, but I just thought I'd weigh them and just go through that so you can see what's going on. So let's have a look. We've got the good old scales. Let's have a look at the Mark 1 first. So it's fully loaded up. We've got two batteries in it. Bear with me, I have to balance this on here. So 2 kilograms, 2051 grams on the Mark 1. That's with the batteries in and the Mark 1 lens. Let's have a look at the Mark 2. God, weighs a ton when you hold it out like that, but let's have a look. So 2244. So there's 200 grams difference. That's with the lens hoods on. I've got the front caps on. So 200 grams difference already. Now that's significant, really, and that's because the lens has got a bit more in it, and you know the batteries are actually bigger. When I've weighed everything separately, which I won't bore you with now, what we've ended up with is a heavier camera system. This is why I've always been reluctant to do it, and something you want to take a look at is don't look at the items individually. I need the battery grip, I need the vertical grip. I find it very hard with my shoulder to be holding the camera over all the time, so I need the vertical grip to keep my shoulder in line. Just something that I've got that I need. So I had to buy the vertical grip for this. I could take a battery out, but yeah, when you're adding these things up, just think of it as a system. If you're using prime lenses, add the prime lenses in there as well, because they're going to be in the bag. So the first thing I had to get over was the fact that I've got a heavier camera, which I didn't want. I've wanted to go towards the R6 and get a lighter system. But when I started looking at the R6 and then putting the new batteries in and the battery grip, you'll be amazed how it all adds up. So what made me go for the 5D Mark IV over the R6? Let's just do that one first. It's the Optical Viewfinder. I can't move forward with these electronic viewfinders yet. Once they're at 9 million pixels and the dynamic range is sorted, and you know they're actually giving us something for our money, which I don't feel they are at the minute. The R6 viewfinder is not good enough in my opinion. So I've gone back to the optical, and the optical in this 5D Mark IV is an improvement over the Mark 1. So you're gaining brightness with this optical viewfinder. So if you're going between the two and you're thinking, you know, one over the other thing to think about with the Mark 1's viewfinder is the screen has got a slight tinge, a warm tinge to it. It's not the end of the world. You'd have to have both cameras together, and a lot of you will own Mark 4s and Mark 1s, and you'll know what I'm saying. It's sort of like a warmth to it. It's not the end of the world, but you get a more crisp image through the viewfinder, the optical viewfinder. So that's, you know, not a major thing, but just something I tell you about. That's why you're watching these videos, is to get my opinion. I prefer the viewfinder. While we're on viewfinders, let's just think about what's in there. So with the focus screen in the 5D Classic viewfinder, you're getting all the focus points. You're getting the one in the center, and you can see all the other focus points. Now, I always wanted a focus screen that would have the center point only, and none of the other points, because the other points are pretty useless, to be honest, with the 5D Mark 1. It's only worth really using the center focus point because it's a cross focus point. So I soon realised that, and I only use center point, focus, recompose using the shutter release. So I've always wanted an actual blank viewfinder. I mean, my dream viewfinder has nothing in it except for the image that I'm taking. And again, I'm going to reference the R6. I'm being nasty to it, but you know, when I'm doing a wedding, I've got boxes and eye-controlled autofocus, you know, with these little boxes all over their faces and jumping around, and the viewfinder's full of information. I don't want it personally. You might, but it gets on my nerves. It's like watching a video game. That's all I can say, and I don't want that. So what's been a real bonus, and I've really enjoyed using this, is the fact, and other people hate this, by the way, and I have to say, when I looked at the 5D Mark IV, goodness, those 4 or 5 years ago, this is one of the reasons I didn't buy it, and I wish I'd have got over that, because it's fine. But anyway, bear with me. So you can set this up, the 5D Mark IV, so that the focus point disappears once you attain focus. So when I half press and I've got focus, and I tend to just stand there then, once I've got focus, my subject's moving, I'm waiting for a reaction. So when you half press, the focus point disappears. All the focus points disappear, and you've got a clear viewfinder, and I'm finding that's absolutely brilliant. No distraction in the viewfinder at all. So I see that as a bonus, to be honest with you. And that definitely wins over the 5D Classic, is the fact you can set up your focus point, half press, it disappears, you've got a clear focus screen, no information on there at all. You can completely 100% focus on the moment then, which is the most important thing to me. And then take your photo, then focus, recompose, your focus point comes up again. Again, that's a bit like Marmite. You're either going to love or you're going to hate that. I thought I'd hate it, but I actually love it. So we've got some real good points going forward for the 5D Mark IV. Weighs a bit more. I haven't noticed that. I have to say, the first wedding, I've done one wedding with this a week or so ago. I've mainly stuck to doing sort of landscape, that sort of thing, just to get used to this. But I did a wedding with this camera. I was so impressed with it. With the 24-105, it felt, there literally was no difference in, I didn't even feel like I had a different camera. It just flowed, and so got no problem at all with going between these two cameras at a wedding. So viewfinder wise, although this has been absolutely fine forever, for me, I have to say I'm enjoying using the new viewfinder focus screen and the focus points. Let's tell you about a few other things. So the shutter. Now, what I've always loved about the 5D Classic is when you do attain focus and then you're waiting for the moment, as you release the shutter, you've got this instant feeling, so you actually know you've grabbed the shot. There's many cameras over the years that I've used where I think I've got it, but it actually didn't time right. XT1 Fujifilm was awful for that, but this has always been great. So that feeling like you don't need to take lots of shots one after the other. You can literally wait for the moment, take your photo, and you've grabbed it. The Nikon FM2 film camera was like it. You can feel and hear the shutter. There's this sort of organic feel, like you if you do weddings and you do a lot of images, you'll know what I mean. It's sort of, you've got to have that feeling like you've got the shot. You don't have to keep looking at the rear screen. And I'm pleased to say that the shutter and the feeling you're getting from the 5D Mark IV is even better. So that feeling of grabbing the shot and knowing the exact moment. And I realised this when I started looking at the screen for the first few images and thought, well, I'm getting it, so I don't need to keep looking at the screen. And this camera, I did not chimp at this wedding at all, which is really odd. I expected to be checking the image every now and then. just to make sure that I actually got the moment. But no, 5D Mark IV with the main shutter on. I say there's a silent shutter, it's the same shutter, but bear with me. 5D Mark IV, you've got a really good feeling through the shutter release and the shutter. So really pleased with that. As I say, I wasn't chimping at this wedding. I knew I was getting the shots. And then the next thing I'll go on to is shutters, is a completely different shutter sound between these two. I think I've got a card in it. Let's bear with me. Don't know if we can get focus. Let me just stick that on manual focus a minute. So a very distinctive sound. And it's so fast. The blackout time is better on the 5D Mark IV. So when you're looking through the viewfinder, I mean, it is superb. Full single image, one shot, grabbing images. So really pleased with that. There is one other benefit I like to the Mark IV, which is the silent shutter. So when you can go into drive and you can come down, bear with me, where am I? Here we go. And you've got your S in there with your single shot. Now it sounds loud in here, and at first I thought, well, I would have preferred the electronic from the R6, but actually getting it in a church and using it, and I tested it with the vicar, by the way, and I do that with the vicars. I literally stand there and say, is this okay? Click, and they usually go, no, it's too loud. With this one, she was fine. So I only stood 3 meters away from her. I did that silent shutter. She was happy. So that's the real test. And so it passed that one. So the 5D Mark I has always been a bit too much for them. And the silent shutter on the Mark IV, they were happy with. That's my test. So yeah, really pleased with that. So this is why I'm quite excited, to be honest, because I've always thought about buying this camera, and I'm really happy that I've spent the money and I'm happy with it. So these few little things might seem like absolutely nothing to you, but in the wedding business, they're everything. As you can tell, we're working in very sensitive areas with people that, you know, who are very nervous, and vicars, and also there's lots of different things going on. So that's cured a little problem for me. So shutter's fine. How fast the feeling, you know, if you know what I'm on about, you know what I'm on about. It's one of those feelings you get where you're connected to the camera. The 5D Mark IV, I was hitting the shots, and even in silent mode, loved it. So yeah, really pleased with that. The screen on the back of the camera obviously has been a massive improvement, but I don't get to look at it much because I chimp so little with this camera. I'm not looking at that image after a few images, paranoid I haven't got it. So that's been a real revelation to me, is the fact that although it's an amazing screen, I'm not actually looking at that much at a wedding. But you've got live view for when you want to do your landscapes, architecture, when you can relax, get your tripod out. Love the live view on the 5D Mark IV. So the screen's really good. Yeah, really impressed with that. So you can get everything on your back screen. You can have a very high level camera. So you can have your camera up on a tripod, put your live view on. Really pleased with that. As for all the buttons over the 5D Mark IV, I mean, it's great they're all there. You've got this new rear button in there. And I will go through all my settings for weddings, etc. I will do one on the 5D Mark IV. The buttons everywhere, well, they're not everywhere, but there's a few that I think are brilliant, and I've programmed them, but as I say, I'll do that another day. But I've tried to make these cameras very simple. I've got to be able to, if this one breaks, I'll be able to pick this one up. This one breaks, pick this one up. So I've made them very simple. I'm only using center point autofocus, and that's what I love doing. Focus, recompose, very fast way to work. So yeah, let's go on to the lenses. So, here we go. It's not really that heavy. 200 grams isn't a lot of difference, to be honest, but let's just have a look at the Mark I, the Mark II while we're here. The reason I didn't buy the Mark II, and there's another video I'll link to at the end of this video about why I didn't. and this lens is heavier, and that's where a lot of the weight's coming from. It's got a bigger throw on it, so we've got our focal length stacked up over a large, you see that distance? So I'm making this look worse than it is now, bear with me. But with the Mk1, I can flick the lens very quickly, go from 24 to 105 very quickly. My biggest concern with this one was it was going to take me forever to flick the lens. And I have to do that quite a lot when I'm stood at the front, bride's coming down the aisle with the father, and I've got the groom with me, and I'm having to do shots of the groom, father, the bride coming down the aisle, and I'm going between 24 and 105, and in between quite a lot. So I'm doing in between 24, 105, and you've got to be able to just do it. And it's hard to describe again unless you do weddings. But that's really important to me. Other people do a prime lens on each body and they'll flick between the two. Some people don't bother and they'll just do the one image of the groom and the background with the bride walking down. But as I say, I get a collection of images and I like to, mix it up. So this is why I use the 24-105. The Mk1, this one, has been an excellent lens, still is. Now, recently it has started getting a bit sticky. That's in the zoom ring. It's not the end of the world, but I get to a point with them where I say, right, I'm going to buy a new Mk1. Problem is, you can't buy any new Mk1s anymore. So I was sort of, shall I buy a second-hand Mk1, which to me means going around a lot of camera shops or ordering a lot of lenses to try and find the right one. And this one came up, mint condition, second-hand. It meant I could just buy it. If I didn't like it, I can sell it at the end of the season. So this is literally was bought, the Mark II, thinking, don't worry about it. I can sell it. I won't lose too much money. Just use it for the season. Anyway, I stuck it on this camera, 5D Mark IV, and absolutely love it. That's all I can say. So I've got no problem at all with this lens. Completely take back everything I said in the video where I said don't buy it. I think there's so many benefits to this lens. It is slightly different in the way it feels, but it balances really well with the 5D Mark IV with the battery grip. So this is a really well balanced setup. And the space between the 24 and 35 I'm really liking. So we got a tiny little space between 24 and 35, which is not, you got that little bit more, and it's, again, it sounds ridiculous, but when you're going between these two and you want to be accurate, you don't want to be cropping your images all the time, bridal prep, this sort of thing, found that to be brilliant. I also like the fact they put the 85 on it, which is marvellous. I had to guess it. So having that feeling of the 85mm, and I do use these lenses, and it's not that I haven't used prime lenses. Believe me, I spent 7 years in the landscape using a 24mm and a 50mm. So I've used all the primes for a very long time. I've got nothing against primes, but as for weddings, I just love using zoom. But what I've started doing is acting more like, right, I'm a prime shooter now, and I'm setting an 85mm. And it's a lens I like, and then I might say, right, I'm a 35mm shooter. So this is a series of primes to me. I know this one is, but this lens feels more like the sort of lens you would set a focal length and then work within that range. So yeah, really enjoying using this. The stabilisation's great in it. One strange thing to say, I know, but this is a noisier image stabilization in the Mk1, so you can actually hear it in your ear when you've got your camera up, and it's extremely reassuring to be able to hear it. That's all I can say. I know it's psychology, but if you can hear it on, then you're thinking, right, I'm steady, everything's fine. This one you actually can't hear, so you have to, trust it's working. You can see it through the viewfinder, obviously, but yeah, it's been great. No problem with it at all. Didn't come with a lens hood, managed to get one off eBay. It is a different lens hood. One thing they have fixed is you've got a button on the side with this one, which is really good. So this physically clicks into place, if I can get it in the right place, and that's it, it won't move. Problem with the Mk1 was always, I've got a bit of red tape on mine. and this comes from doing a wedding where I had it slightly off. That was horrible. So it was vignetting. Imagine it vignetting your wedding. Oh yeah, it wasn't great. So I ended up having to put a bit of red tape on to lock it in place. So the lock on the new one, good idea. I know this is locked, but that can physically, when you put the camera down, it can just turn it, and it's happened to me, believe me. So yeah, only quick on the lenses because I'm going to do another video about that. But as for the balance and the feel, really, really pleased with it, and it's been excellent. So we're getting on 20 minutes now. I'll give it 5 more, see how you get on. So image quality. Now this is hard for me because I completely go on about how good the 5D Mark 1 is. But then, in theory, I should be saying this file is much better than this file. I still prefer the 5D Mark 1. It's that simple. Believe me, I've tested this over the past few weeks, and I still prefer the file out the 5D Mark 1. If this had 2 card slots, this one wouldn't even be here, I don't think. And, you know, I'm turning it now, and we all like image quality. The files out the 5D Mark 4 are causing me some challenges, to be honest with you. 5D Mark 1 files straight out the camera, JPEG or RAW straight into Lightroom, need very little work. I might recover some highlights. I don't touch the shadows. I don't touch anything. I crop, move on to the next image. Very fast workflow from a wedding with a 5D Mark 1. And I'm hoping to get the workflow with the 5D Mark 4 up. We will look at images in another video, but these need more work. The files, once you've worked on them, are very good. What can I say to you? So they need the shadows boosted. You need to pull the shadows back, and then you're pulling the blacks back, and then you're recovering the highlights. You're doing a lot more slides on the Lightroom files, and you know there should be a few people nodding who know they've got both cameras when I'm saying that. They're completely different files. You're talking about, how long was it? 15 years, 10, 15? I don't know how many years difference. They are completely different. Your ability to pull shadow detail is much, much better with this camera. The 5D Mark 1, always exposed to the right, use the highlight end. I always blow my highlights out, by the way, on purpose and recover highlights. They're completely different. You can get them very similar once you muck around with them. Skin tones at the 5D Mark 1. If you ask me to go and do a portrait shoot tomorrow, I'd take the 5D Mark 1. So this will help you, because you might be thinking about spending all this money, and most of the time you don't actually need to. So the biggest reason that I changed, or I've moved over, is we've only got a single card slot. And as you know, I've from other videos, I use the iFi card, and iFi have gone out of business, or they've just stopped supporting everything. They're gone now. Looked into Toshiba. It was all getting very messy. I did a wedding in February. My software was third-party software on the iPad. It all went wrong. I had to put the password in. My backup system fell to pieces, and it hasn't done that for a very long time. Wow. All right, it's only happened twice over a couple of hundred weddings in the past, I think. So this was a nightmare for me. I ended up running out with the card, plugging it in the MacBook, trying to download my images. And that was the day I thought, I'm going to go 2 cards now. If iFi still existed and they were supporting the software, I'd have carried on, to be honest. But, I can't take those sort of risks. I've always been into backup. So being able to put compact flash in and an SD card, I haven't got one in there at the minute. SD card, full-size compact flash, stays in there all the time. So I've got backup in the camera. And at the last wedding I did, not having to back up with the iPad has made a massive difference. So less stress. So, what I've got to do now, I'm going to finish this soon. We've covered the main points. Is make this file so I like it as much as this file, but that's going to take time. I've got to take it through skin tone tests, got to learn about the file more. But I hope that helps you. I know I haven't covered, many of the points that you're thinking of, but the main ones for me, the shutter, focus points, they are very similar cameras. You can swap between these two cameras very easily, but hopefully that gives you an overview. Whether you're spending 200 or 2,000, you're going to be happy with the images out of both cameras. They're just very different. The actual working of the camera, you're going to be fine with. It's just little tiny things that I'm quite excited about, because I've been wanting to fill these gaps that the 5D Classic can't fill. Tiny little things. So I hope that helps and helps you make a bit of a decision when you're looking at these systems. And we're doing another one soon about image quality. I'll get some files up. Okay, thanks a lot.